Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the DeFi enthusiast from the Crypto Ronins. I hope that you're all doing well. And today I have a very, very wonderful, visionary, intelligent person with me once again, my good friend Kenzo Traping from Morphware. How are you, my friend?
Excellent. How are you?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. I'm so glad that you're here once again, and we're getting to do this again. So a lot has happened since we last spoke. Uh, let's talk about Morphware, man. I mean, we were at a point in time where it was just a concept, and you guys were building this next AI company and everything. So what has changed, man? I know a lot has changed. So would you like to elaborate on that? Like what is Morphware today? If you can just define it in a few sentences.
Absolutely. So I think what's new about Morphware, in terms of its core business, is we're especially focused on the power spread business. So, in the beginning, back when we actually first spoke, I think on camera back in 2021, Morphware was actually a decentralized GPU network. So I think we pioneered a lot of interesting stuff in that space with our auction factory and our job factory contracts, which implemented Victory auctions on chain in order to go ahead and coordinate the training of machine learning workloads in a decentralized way. Um, After that, we took a real focus on basically being what's called an off taker in the energy business, meaning basically that we would be a Bitcoin miner and a data center player and basically go ahead and focus on scaling in that direction. What's a challenge there basically is the amount of money that you have to spend going ahead and basically building all that infrastructure out. And then on top of that, going ahead and laying on top that value added layer in terms of like the actual offtake, meaning whether you're mining Bitcoin or you're accelerating AI workloads, uh, y- that computer equipment costs like a ton of money. So what's kind of interesting is we, did a real deep dive into our own business and took a really hard look in the mirror and realized that basically that we'd be able to grow much faster if we just focused on taking our existing electricity contracts, going ahead and basically reselling power to companies that were in a similar position to us. So all around the world, as everyone knows, everyone's looking for electricity, and Morphware, as a new entrant, basically is able to scale up its operations by going ahead and not being as focused on the offtake side as basically being a midstream player where we buy energy in bulk and then basically sell it in smaller chunks.
That's amazing, man. Wow. So you guys went from machine learning and AI, which I still think I believe it's still part of your company, right? It's part of your one of your business models, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We're still pursuing the AI angle. We're still mining Bitcoin every single day. We're still executing buybacks every single day related to the Bitcoin mining. But this is really about the future of the business.
Right. So I want to ask you. So yeah, I know that you guys have also expanded to the UAE, and obviously brings me to your energy question. Congratulations, you guys signed a very big energy contract. I believe $40 million potential contract, right? And so what was the thought process behind that, man? Like, what? How did this thing's turn from this to that? How were you able to actually make this happen, man? I mean, that's amazing. That the fact that you guys were able to actually do this, and convert energy into, you were able to sell energy to another company in the UAE, right? And how did all this come about? I mean, if you can just summarize it, whatever you can actually talk about. Essentially.
Sure. So what's interesting basically is that again, a lot of companies were in a very similar predicament to ours. And as we start to look around the space and talk to a lot of different industry players and leaders, we realized basically that pivoting or basically expanding our set of services aggressively towards the power spread business would be the fastest way to grow when we modeled it. So the margins and energy are razor thin. And when you're not generating your own energy, basically you're in a little bit of a pickle because people don't want to pay that much money for electricity. And people want to sell the electricity to you for as high of a price as they can get. That's kind of the beauty of being in Paraguay and coming down here and building the relationships that we built, over the past 4 years. Basically, we're very well positioned with our land and our electricity contracts, basically to go ahead and be in a position where we can be a midstream player profitably.
Awesome. Awesome. And how does this benefit the holders of the X and W token?
Right. So I think the first thing about projects, basically, honestly, is staying alive, right? The default in startup land, even outside of Web3 and Web2, is an overwhelming bias towards failure, right? 99% of crypto projects fail. And I'd say there's probably a similar percentage in Web2 startup land, if you will. So the first part is basically survival, right? We've gotten really lean over the past year and basically really focused on becoming a business that's fundable in a very non-traditional sense, which means basically lowering our OPEX, especially our non-energy related OPEX, as low as possible. And then basically figuring out how we can grow from there. So ultimately, what powers the buybacks is the mining activity. The thing is, Bitcoin is at a relatively low price right now from the miner perspective. And network difficulty is, I believe, at an all-time high, right? So miners are really feeling the pinch. So that's one way we've been able to go ahead and get contracts from other industry players, some of which are much larger than ours, because those players, again, are becoming especially price conscious when it comes to the per hour rate that they pay for electricity, right? Because they're using a lot of it. But also, I think, for us, what was really imperative, sometimes or periodically, I like to kind of like really kind of look at what we're doing from a big picture perspective. And I think one of the things that startups can get wrong, just in a very big picture sense, is not focusing enough. Right. So I don't think we were focusing enough on one specific thing and getting really good at executing on one thing. And right now, I think we've done that. We still have the AI angle. We still have the BTC mining that we're doing. But basically, growing in terms of our own power consumption will ultimately come full circle in the value stream, like in the buyback picture, right? So what I mean by that is this. A lot of folks in the community come by once in a while into the chat and they say something like, hey, why don't you guys take all the money you're making and just buy more miners, right? And that'll increase the buybacks, right? It seems like a very obvious and elegant solution. And I think simple solutions are generally the best. But what's interesting here is it actually caps our growth, right? In terms of, or to put it a different way, the buybacks will never increase if we do that. It will be constant. And what will happen is our market cap will basically stagnate, right? With the angle that we're doing is we're increasing our power load and we're bootstrapping this process of increasing our power consumption rate, right? So it's kind of like if you're a bodybuilder or an athlete or something and you're taking in more calories, but you're burning the calories, uh, you're still, but you're working out every day. right? You're actually increasing your strength, right? So even on like, it's kind of a bad analogy that I'm just thinking of, but the general idea is that, just to be really direct about it, our goal is eventually in the power business to be our own tenant, if that makes sense. So you can imagine, I guess another way to put it might be a much better way might be like, let's say we're building an apartment building, right? Initially, we're leasing everything out, and maybe a lot of those tenants are actually doing Airbnb, right? And then basically, we would want to be renting the apartment units ourselves to do Airbnb ourselves in the future, if that makes sense. It's not a good analogy, but generally the point is we want to use the money we make in the power spread business to buy more miners, right? And those miners will power the buybacks, and those will be much more miners in the future, right? And what we'll have, hypothetically speaking, like a much more uncapped level of growth than basically what we would have if we just put everything into buybacks today, right? Because we wouldn't have the energy to be able to mine, if that makes sense.
Right. So it's basically, kind of like the concept of compounding, but in the, in terms of rather than just finding ways of your revenue generation, just adding more to the token, and you never know when somebody just sells and the market cap sort of stagnates. You've decided to rather increase the miners, get more buybacks, and the profits from those buybacks and the more expansion that takes place, I guess the more profit there is and the more buybacks there are. Am I correct on this?
That's exactly right. That's a much more elegant way to say it. Basically, it's all about compounding growth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the secret. That's awesome. So, talking about BNBs, man, I saw something very interesting that you guys recently posted. You guys were talking about renting out energy, and I mean, like people could actually set up their miners with you guys in your facilities, and actually earn Bitcoin. How does that work?
Yeah.
How would so my question is, how would that benefit? What is the benefit for the Morpher holders? Do they get any special price points? Do they get any special entries? What 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 is possible? Can they like do they can they buy miners from their Morpher tokens, or what's going to happen? Like, could you elaborate on that if you can, if it's possible?
Absolutely. So, long story short, uh, our community is full of people that love Bitcoin mining in kind of in an enthusiast sense, right? Or like almost in a hobbyist sense. And I think that's really cool. So, we do have spare electricity that we could go ahead and tap. So we got to thinking a long time ago, why don't we go ahead and make this available to our community members? Right. So the final details are basically how much XMW should someone have before we give them like a more agreeable electricity rate, if that makes sense. Um, but also, it's a really cool way to get the community involved in the project, right? So I think one, um, there's the question of how much Morphware should someone have before they can deploy a miner? But two, it's a separate revenue stream for our business because right now what we're doing is working with large enterprises, right? So a lot of we have three big contracts, right? In terms of like hosting services agreements and things like that. Um, and the thing is, what we want to go ahead and do is empower our community to go ahead. And it sounds a little corny, but I'm just kind of like coming up with this phrase right now, but to democratize Bitcoin mining a little bit, right? It's very hard to get this power rate. I think in New York, London, wherever if you're in a very metropolitan area, it's going to be very expensive to mine Bitcoin. I think the power rate in New York is like, I don't know, $150 per megawatt, maybe, if you wanted to mine Bitcoin. And in London, it might be like triple that or twice that. I'm not sure. But in Paraguay, it's actually much more agreeable, right? So we've offered $67 per megawatt hour, which, with good equipment, you can be profitable mining at. And it's a really powerful way, I think, for community members to take a long-term view on Morphware and for us to leverage basically our operational expertise when it comes to community engagement.
Okay, that's amazing. I think that's really cool. So just to clarify, um, could you talk about like those details as to how many Morphware does one person need to in order like to run just one miner by any chance, or are these details yet to be revealed that you can't talk about yet? You guys are still deciding on this.
Well, we've been kicking numbers around. The general idea, here's what's really interesting. One, we don't want to make it too exclusive, right? We don't want it to be like, you got to be rich to mine Bitcoin with us, because that doesn't make a lot of sense. But also, the Bitcoin miners aren't necessarily cheap. They can cost a couple $1,000, at least to, profitably mine Bitcoin at that rate. So we don't want someone to have a bad experience either. We don't want someone basically to buy a really crappy Bitcoin miner to plug it in and to generally be losing money, right? And then there's a third kind of question mark, which is related to kind of like the whole bring your own miner type phenomenon, right? Like we don't want to be accused of breaking someone's miner, right? God forbid, right? Or if something's wrong with the miner, like if they send it and it's been in a dust bowl for, I don't know, 6 months, and then it has to go out and be sent to maintenance more frequently than it should be, people might complain about downtime, right? And some base load, some amount of electricity that they have to pay, even though the miner wasn't online. There's a lot of kind of real world things in the mining industry, some of which are kind of like bad luck related, and some of which are just like the practical realities of mining. A lot of which Morphware goes ahead and, in a sense, simplifies, right? Because all people ask us is kind of like, what are the buybacks, right? Like how much you guys buying back this month? How much you guys buying back a day? If the miners do go out, they're like, hey, the miners are down. Why are they down? Right? All that takes a ton of work. Maintenance, dealing with modulation from the grid, going ahead and getting more power from the power authorities, right? These are all kind of like the real world realities of mining that I'm not sure everyone's ready to deal with. So, and there's no threshold in terms of like the number of Morphware tokens that's going to be able to help us parse who's easier to deal with than not. But these are all kind of factors that come in and things that we're thinking about as we expand into the cloud mining business. Another
Okay.
model we're basically thinking of is, this is going to sound kind of weird, but this is what other folks do in the UAE. Basically, they sell basically some synthetic miner, meaning there's a backend which is comprised of a bunch of miners, like an array of miners, which contribute, right, in terms of a hash rate perspective to this synthetic miner. And then the end consumer would buy, like, instead of buying like a Bitmain S23 or a What's miner, whatever, or a Bitdeer miner or whatever, right? Some sort of physical machine that we maintain, but also like they would get angry at us if it was like offline, right? We would probably get blamed, right? Like instead of that, like we have the miners, right? And then this person goes ahead and purchases like a synthetic miner, in a sense, which is backed by the hash rate of real miners. So basically, in that scenario, I think community members would be much happier because there wouldn't be this concept of downtime. We would load balance on the back end, right? And then basically, we would be in control of what's called the resource negotiation and the job tracking, right? Basically controlling this fleet of miners as they go online and offline. We have excellent uptime, as everyone can see, in our mining pool. But what's a little bit more confusing, basically, I think for a lot of like retail folks, if you will, is is going to be confusion that arises from like this bring your own miner model, or even purchasing used miners or whatever, purchasing miners from a catalog that we present to them. Even if it's a new miner, new miners go bad all the time, right? And these are things that like we deal with as Morphware, right? And if something gets damaged in shipping, or you just get really unlucky and I don't know, a bug flies into it or whatever, who knows, right? It's just like for some reason the miner's damaged and it has to be repaired or something, or God forbid it goes out. Some very, very rare sense. It's like we would carry the blame and the risk related to that and the cost, right? Perhaps depending on the contract. And even if we had some really ironclad contract, if we were dealing with a community member, could get very ugly. So
Wow.
these are
Yeah.
all considerations to think about.
Yeah. That's a huge undertaking. And so just to clarify, uh, from this model, okay, if I were to speak for only in terms of the crypto aspect, right? In this model, what is the advantage for of having the XMW token? Like, would there be some more incentives for that as well?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
In terms of the token itself,
Hmm.
like this model, right? The whole
Hmm.
mining, either you guys are maintaining the miners, or you guys are giving a good electricity rate based on a certain amount of people that are holding a certain amount of morpher, right? Besides that, like, are there any other advantages from this version of the business model for XMW?
Yeah, so I think what one cool thing that has been suggested to us, which I think is an interesting idea, is as long as someone stakes the token into some registry contract, right, which is some ERC standard I forgot the name of. Um, Basically, there would be a wallet address tied to a particular miner, right? So as long as that wallet address stakes, let's say, I don't know, 100,000 tokens or 1,000,000 tokens. I think 100,000 tokens is fair, right?
Mhm.
100,000 tokens into this contract. Then programmatically, we're charging them a lower rate.
Right. So
And
this
if
is
they
this is all.
unstake it,
Yeah, sorry. Go on. Yeah.
if they unstake it, then the rate goes up,
Okay. Okay. Ah,
right?
fascinating. Okay, okay, I get it. So,
Yeah.
so they can
So
still run their miners even without the XMW token, but having the XMW token gives them a much better electricity rate there that they're not really going to get anywhere else, basically.
yeah, drastically lower rate.
Drastically lower, and that means more in profit for them as well.
Right. And every fraction of a penny counts in mining. I mean, every
Okay.
single dollar counts. So, yeah, so it's kind of like one way to it's an elegant way to balance like token supply and demand, right?
Yeah.
With with the realities of Bitcoin mining. But yeah, basically, yeah, anyway, that's an idea that we've explored at depth or at
Okay.
length.
Okay. That's awesome. I look forward to more details regarding this. I think this is really exciting. Uh, I think it would be fair to say that you guys are not only an AI token anymore. I think you guys are more of a RWA token at this point. Am I correct on this?
Yeah, I think we are an RWA token. It's really funny. Like I think we've always been in a sense. Well, maybe when we were GPU protocol, we were a little bit more back in 2021. We're more of an AI project. but I think everything is coming towards energy. The founder of G42, Elon Musk, Jensen Huang, a couple of other people have like kind of alluded to the fact that everything will come down in terms of the computational unit, basically to the kilowatt hour, or basically to like the atomic unit of energy, or the most granular unit of energy, right? So I think, yeah, it's an exciting direction for the project. It makes the most sense. And what's kind of daunting for a lot of Web3 projects at our age, right? We're 1 year and 4 months old. I think we just kind of passed that threshold. Is now there's an enormous amount of pressure from our community to become a quote unquote real business, right? So many tokens don't live past like the first week or first few days or launch or whatever. We've somehow been able to keep, the project going up until now, but now there's an enormous amount of pressure for us to go ahead again and to become like a real world business. So, part of that is looking around you and being like, okay, what people do I have around me? What assets do we have? Um, which direction is the wind blowing? Right. That's a really important one. And basically, how can we bring those three components or forces kind of like together, right? And make something special in the market happen, which is really tough.
Yeah, I can imagine, but and this brings me to my next question, Kenzo. Look,
Mhm.
honestly, like after Ethereum and Chainlink, I mean, if there's anything that I've seen that has this much infrastructure, I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say this that Morpher probably has the most amount of infrastructure out of any Web3 project in the space, right? Um, I mean, we're talking about real infrastructure here, real miners, land, energy deals, all of that, you know. But and you guys have signed some you guys have done some really impressive work. I mean, even better than a lot of projects that are sitting at billion-dollar market caps in the crypto space. My question is that initially, before all of this, Trump coming into power and all that, everything was kind of, things were going up if we remember, right? And we saw Morphware, go from uh 2 zeros and one all the way up to like I think it was 20 cents, if I'm not mistaken, or 22 cents, something like that.
Are you talking about Morphware? Or are you talking about another project? Morphware?
Yeah, I'm talking about Morphware. Yeah.
Yeah. So we hit just
Yeah.
under 20 cents.
Yeah, just under 20 cents. Yeah. So, after that, I mean, you guys have more infrastructure than ever, but and this is a question that some people have asked me, so this is only why I'm asking you, and because you can give me a better answer on this. People are like, well, they're doing a lot of work, but why hasn't the price gone up? What are your thoughts on what
Yeah.
are your thoughts on this, man? Like, and this we can talk about this, and you can kind of give me an observation of the markets as well in general. But like with so much development, I haven't seen any project in Web3 having this much development. So why isn't it reflecting on the token's price?
It's a great question. It's something we're frustrated too with too. But I think that honestly, a lot of the token price has to do with FOMO, right? So breaking that down kind of conceptually, and again, I'm not like some sort of marketing expert, but this is my take on it, just as an observer in the space for, you know, I guess over 10 years now, believe it or not. Um, I'd say, you know, what we got right back in those runs, right, where Morpher went up a lot, is we got the word out about the project to people who hadn't heard about it before and to people who were receptive to what we were saying, right, to our message. Um, I think that back when we launched, it was a really bold move. So our bet when we launched, and our launch, we had a really great launch. Our bet when we launched was basically that looking back, Yeah, we launched on September 18th around 4 p.m. So basically 2 p.m. that day back in 2024, which is a pretty long time ago now, right? I can still remember, as clear as day. Our bet was that there would be a 50%, a 50 basis point cut, right? Like half a percentage point by the Fed. And no one, I think 99% of Wall Street was against this. But for me, I believed this, right? Because, well, frankly, we thought it was a political decision, right? So, w- and we were right, right? So markets took off and we launched that day, right? So that was a big bet. Then, we spoke to a lot of people in the community over time, over those next few months. We formed some really deep relationships. We got introduced to the right people. We got the message out to them about the project, and they thought what we were building was really cool. And they told their communities, right? This is kind of formulaically speaking, this is really what worked, right? And again, I'm no marketing expert, but this is my observation. I think, they say, obviously, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So what I'm saying is like, even though our token price is down a lot, right? Since then, I think we're a tenth of the price. But the point is basically that formula still works, right? Get the message out to very popular people with lots of followers, to have them spread the message to their communities, and then go ahead and continue to to find places and conduits to amplify your message, right? So I think that kind of formulaically, again, I think is what works in the space from a marketing perspective. And there's so much substance again behind the project that I think once people find out about it, they're like, wow, how have I not heard about this before? And we were talking about this a little bit, before the call, just as friends. And I think, I'm not going to drill down too much here, but basically the problem with like the utility space on ETH is that it's become very it's become it's basically become a little bit like an echo chamber, right? Um it's the what I would observe what I have observed is a lot of people rotate from project to project, right? And a lot of that money is basically leaving the ecosystem, right? So it's become very PvP, right? And very tribal, right? One project has some big announcement to make on one day, and another project basically feels like liquidity is being taken out of their project and plopped over onto theirs, and vice versa. Maybe the opposite effect will happen the next day or something like that the next week. So, what's interesting, I think, as a founder, is one, it's very hard to time the news in the market, right? Like today, we announced our BNB bridge. And then Trump announced 200% tariffs on French wine or something like that over this Greenland stuff. So, from our perspective, basically, what we have to do is basically be one, we have to have a plan, but two, be really consistent, basically in the execution of that plan. And obviously, you're not going to time everything perfectly, but if you space the news out, obviously like some news will have the opportunity to hit harder than others, right? So thankfully today, this is kind of like the first step that Morphware made in like becoming a multi-chain ecosystem. And I'm glad that the news was well received by the community, and I think it's kind of like an opportunity for us to get outside of the echo chamber and get out the word to groups of people who haven't heard about the project before and would think it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, that took me by surprise. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised that you guys decided to move to BNB. If you could talk to me about your thought process as to what made you decide to actually make this kind of move. Obviously, not every detail, obviously, but whatever you can tell me, what was the thought process of going to BNB? And also, what I found really fascinating was that you guys, the timing was also very interesting in my opinion, because recently, I don't know if I'm sure you've noticed this, that Ethereum has finally solved its bottleneck issue of, high gas fees. So like we had some really high volume just a few days ago. Like, when there was that craze of Pepe back then, it was like $50 per gas. Right now, it's just only costing 1 cent now. So it seems like Ethereum actually solved its biggest bottleneck issue, and everybody claiming to be the next layer two or the ETH killer, that narrative is just going to die out. So my question is, and obviously I think gradually that's probably going to kill a lot of layer twos unless they have something really really unique or different. I think Base could probably survive because of its Coinbase backing. Binance, of course, they have BSC. It makes sense. They're a big company, right? So I think they'll be fine too. But what made you become a multi-chain project, and why BNB in particular?
It's a good question. I actually looked back just to double check this, but back in 2021, we were always talking about BNB. In fact, we initially back in 2021 had launched 50 per if you remember this, back in 2021 when we launched, more money came from our BNB safe than from our ETH safe. Like we had launched on both basically, and back then when Gwendolyn Regina was in charge of Binance Labs, we were in deep talks with Binance. We had traveled to Dubai. We had met the Binance team in 2022, and we met with them like 7 or 8 times, right? So it's actually always been part of Morphware's DNA going back to 2022. People can look at it in the community chat, right? They can just scroll out or use the search function or whatever. We've always been talking about BNB, right? So, and we've always talked about a multi-chain future, right? Any of the big projects are in multiple ecosystems. And I think that what's special about BNB, without taking anything away from other ecosystems, is the institutional support of by far and away the largest centralized exchange in the world, right? I think Binance is, at least on paper, 5 times larger than Coinbase. It's probably much larger than that, right? And it's kind of the premier trading venue for crypto, right? No matter where you go around the world, people know what Binance is, right? You go to Brazil, you go to Argentina, you go to Dubai, you go to the US. I mean, everyone knows what Binance is, right? And you can't actually say the same for a lot of exchanges, actually. Upbit is very popular in Korea. Coinbase is very popular in the US. Everything there's a surprising amount of stuff in crypto that's very provincial, right? Even memes, like the concept of the meme, right? It's very kind of regional in a sense, right? So I'd say there's that. Also, I think what's important in terms of community development is that Binance has a special focus on Asia, right? So when you think basically, a lot of people ask us, hey, why didn't you bridge to Base instead? Right? And I'd submit, well, one, Base is super focused on US retail, right? And two, I'd submit that, and not taking anything away from Base, right? There's a bunch of cool projects on Base, and so on, right? But the point is, with BNB, I mean, it's an enormous ecosystem. If you just open up CoinMarketCap versus Bitcoin, and you got ETH, and I think it's USDT, and then it's BNB, right? Like, why wouldn't you?
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's I think right now the main goal is to increase the Morphware community to have more exposure, to get that crowd as well, the Asian market onto like create awareness for Morphware. And I know you guys started this staking pool incentive, like basically half BNB, half Morphware, right? Talk to me about that, man. I mean, who are you collaborating with, and why did you pick those guys? And talk to me about who exactly have you partnered up with regarding this, and what made you decide to work with them? I mean, I looked into the project; it seemed to be like a very new sort of a project. So why didn't you like pick something like Pancake Swap for this? Just just a curious thought.
Well, it's a really good question. So Yieldra, our new partner, is actually a small project that is a project of my friend Simon's, and and his friend John is also a friend of the project. And these are actually guys. John actually flew us out to Dubai when we had no money, just to go meet his team and everything. And since then, we've always basically talked about doing something together. And what I especially like about Yieldra is that they were building something, kind of not necessarily for the sake of building, because I know that has its own pitfalls, but basically like they were really focused on building something first, without a token, right? They were like, we're going to build a cool staking protocol. This used to be a thing back in like 2023. People were building these things, right? Like real on-chain products. Um, and I think, and here's the other thing: is Simon's really smart, right? John is too. Uh, I think Simon is more the technical brains behind Yieldra, and I think what they built is cool, right? They walked us through basically their product, and if you read the story of Uniswap, for instance, right? Like in the Wall Street Journal, like that's a pretty incredible story. The guy Hayden Adams, I think, I can't remember what his name is, but like there's a story in the Wall Street Journal about this guy who was he was applying to Google and like all these like big tech companies, and he was having trouble getting a foot in the door, and then he went ahead and created Uniswap. It's like this real like Cinderella story, and I think I see a lot of that in Simon. You know, I think that I think the kid's an absolute genius. Um, I don't say that about many people, by the way. And I think that he's kind of got the gift, so to speak. And I think what they've built and their vision of their project is really cool. So there's that. But also like, when we were thinking about going to BNB, we were like, who's going to guide us through this transition? So back in the day, if you'll remember, Morpher was actually the first institutional investor in, sorry, Harmony, the blockchain, which used to be a big project for those of you that don't know. Harmony used to be this mega big project, mega, mega, mega big, huge. And they bridged, or they had this ETH bridge set up, and they got hacked for like 50 million bucks. And they killed a lot of the momentum of their project. And it was a real shame, right? So the reason I'm bringing that up is going multi-chain still isn't that easy. It's not that simple, right? You kind of, I forget what that guy's name is in like Greek mythology that takes the people across like the river to hell, to Hades. But like you need a guide, right? Someone who's done it before, and someone who knows their way around both ecosystems, right? Because each kind of have their own pernicious details that can that can trip you up as a founder, right? So I trust Simon a lot. We hung out in Dubai for a while. We were actually, during that storm, that famous storm in Dubai, I actually slept in his hotel room. He had a spare bed, and I was like, "Dang, I can't even make it back to my place." Like in the marina, we were on the Palm. We were all hanging out in this bar on the Palm all night, and then it was time to hit the sack, and I was like, "Dang!" Like, um, anyway, I ended up crashing in his room. It was awesome. It was like it was a great experience, and we all ended up staying at like the Hilton or something, because we were all stuck there. So it was another bonding experience. It was really cool. So yeah, it was just like, we're mates, and yeah, I think if anyone was going to guide us through the process, it'd be him. And people. Here's the thing: people ask me to partner with their projects every day, or I'm always getting someone's always DMing me about like, "Hey, bro, I think you should take a look at this project. It's really cool." Da da da. And I'm really apprehensive about partnering with projects just because like I almost have like a policy of like not partnering with a project if we don't know the founders, right? Because the space is really volatile. There's a lot of rugs, and if we go ahead and promote something like and it's a rug, it looks bad on us, right? So we're pretty cautious about that. Um, so yeah, I think basically when it comes to Yieldra, I'm confident in their ability basically to guide us through these waters. And yeah, I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to basically expanding the ecosystem towards BNB.
That's amazing. So in summary, basically quality sees quality, right?
I'm sorry.
I'm saying so in summary, it's quality recognizes quality.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's that, but also, sometimes when you go to these conferences, you meet like just like a great group of folks, and you stay in touch. And I love conferences because you kind of get together with like-minded individuals, and you're like, wow, we're not crazy. Like we're like sometimes you're just like, man, am I the only person left in crypto? Like sometimes I literally feel like that, like you're just like doom scrolling through Twitter, and you're just like, fuck, silver's up like 89 billion%, and like copper's up, gold's up, and you scroll past Bitcoin, and you're just like, fuck, it just like drives you crazy. But the point is, when you go to some of these conferences and you meet like folks that are like excited about the future of DeFi, and like excited about GameFi, and excited about things where you're like, you feel like these are movements that are a little bit past their prime or something, and someone's like, no, this is why my product is gonna revolutionize DeFi, or this is why I think this game is cool, or this is why, like it's I think it's really inspiring in a sense to like meet young founders, and and to hear about what they're working on, and then later on, I think what's very natural is for you to reflect on like how that product can fit into, basically your existing set of problems
Yeah,
as a
awesome.
solution. As a solution.
Awesome. Yeah, so sticking on the subject matter for a moment. As somebody who's built a company that is generating revenue in Web3, which is I think it's a really big deal, and not just like revenue one time. Hey, we did it once. No, you guys are constantly doing it. You guys have a plan. You guys have infrastructure. As somebody who's building like this, I want to ask you, man, because I agree with you that I think DeFi is very important, and all these narratives, all these sub niches that are being built in the crypto industry, I think they're very, very important for an industry to exist. But at the same time, there is a group of very, very arrogant and I would say very, very ignorant people, which I think are from the Bitcoin community. I'm sorry to say that, but they are. And that think that that is the be all end all of everything, and everything else in the crypto space is absolute nonsense. What are your thoughts on that, man? Because when in 2019, from 2019 to 2021, I saw utility absolutely crush it in this market. And do you feel that that moment is going to come back tenfold, or and what are your thoughts on these people that just keep saying Bitcoin is the be all and all and nothing else matters? Give me your thoughts on this, man.
Doesn't bother me. I mean, well, I'd say it's a good question, dude. So I once heard of, I'm not going to say this right. I'm going to butcher this quote, but I'm going to paraphrase here. I once heard of someone much smarter than me once said, "A cynic is just someone that doesn't want to be disappointed again." So I think a lot of Bitcoin maxis, and I used to be an ETH maxi, right? I read the entire Ethereum source code back in I think 2017 or 2018. Like I've gone through all the phases, I think, of a crypto bro, right? Back in 2014, one of my best friends was mining Litecoin. He was mining Bitcoin and then he was mining Litecoin, and then we started mining ETH together. Um, and I barely knew what a graphics card was. I mean, I understood the concept of a daughter board, the PCIe slot. You know, the PCIe slot for me was always kind of like a mind fuck because, you know, back in my day, which is like I'm a total boomer, but like back in my day, the PCIe slot used to be used for network card interfaces or network interface cards, right? Or NICs, right? As some computer people call them. So, you know, and it was back then, anyway, like long story short, at the time, right, we were just trying to understand mining pools, right? And we were like, back in, I think, 2014, my friend was like showing me how Bitcoin worked. And I just thought it was the stupidest thing ever. And maybe it was like 2014, maybe 2015. And I just thought it was so stupid. And I was like, what? And this when Bitcoin cost nothing. It was like, I can't remember. It was like, it didn't cost a lot of money, but no, it still cost some money. And for me, and I had like zero money. And I was just like, this is way too expensive for me. Right. And it's just to like buy or whatever. I'm a total idiot, obviously, like in hindsight. But this is what I thought. I was like, this is like really expensive if you're going to buy like a lot of them. Right. So my friend, you know, was much smarter than I am. He was like, you know, we were looking at mining pool. Anyway, like long story short, yeah. Back to your question about like maxis and stuff. So like long story short, like we went through all the phases. Like first we were Bitcoin people. Then we were like, wait, like you can mine this thing called Litecoin on like and back then I think it was I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this correctly, but it was like Bitcoin had it was like now it was somehow easy to mine Bitcoin on a GPU, but it was still easy to mine Litecoin on a CPU. So you could like twin mine them or something like that. Or people on Reddit were doing like interesting things. But I just remember we got into Litecoin a lot. But then he had these GPUs in a milk crate, and it was like, and his room was like outrageously hot, right? It was just like he had all the windows open. It was winter, and it was like and we were this was before ETH, but we were mining quite a bit, right? Or I mean, we weren't actually mining a lot, but for us, we were like, it was like a thing. We were like, oh wow, we have two GPUs running, and you know, like a couple gaming PCs and a couple random other PCs, right? Um, and all of which we sold way too early, by the way. Like just because you know we're totally anyway, totally regret all that stuff. But the point is this. Um, yeah, you know, with maxis, the thing is they're just mostly, I think. Well, I would also submit, you know, in a weird way, they're kind of right in a lot of in the grander scheme of things, right? Like what I mean by that is this. Like me, I'm a true believer in Morphware, right? Do I think Morphware anyway, like I don't want to make price predictions, but the point is this. The Bitcoin people were super right. And so were the Litecoin people. Remember when Litecoin had its run like a couple years ago? Like it was real. I don't know what it is now, but it was really a thing. It was like number 4 or 5 or something like that. Um, and Litecoin was kind of a cool concept. It was like, hey, we're the Litecoin was basically considered and was, from both the community and the developer perspective, as a test network for Bitcoin, right? Um, so I guess the reason I'm bringing all that up is, in a sense, you could argue that the Bitcoin people were ultimately right, like the Bitcoin maxis, right? Because these guys just got burned on a bunch of other stuff. I think most of them got burned on a bunch of other stuff and ended up as Bitcoin maxis. But there are some people like, I think Max Kaiser and a couple other people, like guys I used to listen to like a really long time ago, who were like completely orange pilled, like going back, like they were kind of right about everything, you know? Um, I think, but here's the thing. I think that basically that's changing. So what I mean by that is this: like the New York Stock Exchange just announced that it's going to allow for 24/7 trading, I think, via some sort of on-chain tokenized digital twin of like the equities market. Um, that's a huge step, right? And there's more and more serious projects every day launching on chain, right? And there's like RWA assets coming on chain. And there's all sorts of other stuff coming on chain. Morgan Stanley made some big announcement the other day, right? And long story short, I think that in a sense, the Bitcoiners were totally right. And the ETH maxis, I don't know. I mean, like you could argue that like ETH hasn't really like done a lot price wise, right? In the past, I don't know, 5 years or whatever. But at least it didn't die, right? There was a lot of institutional money dedicated to killing ETH. There was a lot. Do you remember like back in 2022, everyone had an Ethereum killer. Back in 2018, people had Ethereum killers, right? There was like EOS. There was all this other stuff, right? Every day, everyone was like, we're the Ethereum killer, right? This is how we're going to like smush Ethereum and be like the biggest smart contract platform in the world, right? It's total bullshit, right? So the thing is, right, when you really zoom out, um, I'd say, right, one, there's kind of like, there's almost, you could argue that there's, you know, I'd submit basically what's occurring is this. I think we've spoken about this before, but basically there's a segmentation problem from retail's perspective. They kind of group everything together, but it's not really the case, right? I'd submit Bitcoin is like digital gold, right? And that's kind of like a very unique thing, right? And it has a lot of like first mover advantage in a sense. And ETH does too. ETH carries a serious amount of first mover advantage as like the first smart contract platform, the world computer category. But Solana, BNB, Avalanche, right, Tron, a lot of folks are in the world computer category, and it's yet to be seen who's going to be the winner. I think it'll be Ethereum, but who knows, right? Um, but the other thing there is also like BNB is a major force because basically it has all this institutional support, right? And then basically there's this altcoin space, right? All the tokens that ride on top of this world computer network. And perhaps maybe even eventually the Bitcoin network, like Bitcoin secured networks and all this different stuff, like the cool stuff that Babel's doing, right? BSNs. Who are our friends, by the way, Babel. I would say, in the altcoin space, obviously there's a lot of dog shit that launches every hour of every day. And a lot of it's really fun, I bet. I'm not personally into it. Um, but I'd submit basically that there's, a lot of cool stuff that's coming on chain. I think uh blockchains are the future of VC funding, right? Or whatever kind of VC funding becomes, right? There's a lot of talk about like all the gatekeeping that's going to go away from the democratization of basically seed funding, right? And then there's also a lot of I think games will come back, right? I think that I think GameFi is going to be like with the widespread adoption of these large language models. I think it's a lot easier to code games than ever before. And I think GameFi will come back, right? So, but it'll come back in like a different. Before it was like GameFi when it was on its deathbed became very cynical. It was just very like click to earn, right? And it was just a lot of people just like getting on these games and just like tapping right on like a million different cell phones and like, just basically all these click farms just clicking away. But I think like basically like it'll become more like Steam, I think. But what's interesting is like if you talk to your friends that like play a lot of video games, they hate crypto. They hate it. They hate crypto more than anyone. It's like really funny. So I think that's a challenge for GameFi. Um, there's that. Anyway, so I'm rambling a little bit here, but yeah, those are my thoughts on like maxis and all that stuff.
Okay. Okay. So I've just got two more questions. So one of my second last questions, Kenzo, is do you see a return to flight to quality in 2026 and onwards in crypto?
Mm, a flight to quality. Well, what does quality mean?
Quality for me would be, utility plays, utility companies, real builders, just like what I saw back in 2021, where Zilliqa went from 0.004 to, sorry, 0.001 to all the way to 12 cents, where I saw, because there was actually interest on those chains happening, right? So there was a lot of money coming into all these chains that were actually trying to build something. Do you feel that point is going to come back very soon?
Mm, I think we spoke about this a little bit before, and I mean not on this call, but just as friends. Uh, my hunch, and now it's a hunch of the Wall Street Journal, but uh someone has shared this with me a little bit before. I think Trump is going to try to blow the doors off the economy before the 250th birthday, before July 4th, before the 250th birthday of America. I think he's going to do everything possible to make the economy surge before then. And it's worth noting that he has a very, very, very important election for his legacy coming up in November. Right. And, everyone on planet Earth, I mean, this is the most popular guy on planet Earth and the most powerful one, right? So, and the reason that's important is, I mean, is the fact that he's the most powerful person in the world, right? The most powerful person in the world wants to do something. I'd submit that it has a pretty high likelihood, or a higher likelihood than most, of occurring, right? So kind of like from a planning perspective, right? Well, one, you could argue, is there like a Cobra effect, as they say in economics, right? Sometimes there's unintended outcomes of like policy changes. There's a great Freakonomics episode on this. If you listen to that, but I'd still go. I'd submit that basically. I think the economy, again, not financial advice ever, but I'd submit that the economy is going to surge. I don't know if crypto will surge with it, but my hunch is that Trump going into a very important election for his legacy, right? Because he can't get reelected, so this is really his last election, right? As the kingmaker of the Republican Party, right? And it's the 250th birthday of America, right? So I don't care who you are. Everyone has round number bias. People love big, right? 249, that's pretty cool. But 250, that's like a nice round number, right? Like, and the point is, um, I personally believe that like Trump's going to do, and the Wall Street Journal wrote this too, right? Trump's going to do everything he can to make the economy do better than ever. I hope crypto is part of that agenda, that it's not left behind. I think crypto has a lot to offer to the world in terms of democratizing finance and to, increasing basically, basically increasing, access to the financial markets around the world to everyday people. And yeah, I hope that it's not left behind. But it's yet to be seen.
Right. And one question that I get a lot is someone was mentioning it to me, and I think you can elaborate on this in a better way. That is that so more for you guys have these NVIDIA B200s, which are like really, really powerful, machines. That's some serious power right there, right? Someone was saying to me that someone was trying to connect the dots, and I think I don't you would give me a better answer on this. They were like, well, how does this help the miners? And what how does one B200 just make any difference or something like that? It came from a place, I felt from a place of ignorance. So Kenzo, first of all, what does the B200, what type of role does it play in the Morpher facility, number one, and how many do you guys have, and do you plan to add more into your facility as well, into your arsenal?
Yeah. So we have 8 B200s. They have nothing to do with crypto mining. They're just basically for running AI workloads. The thing is, it's a really expensive piece of equipment, so you get to charge a lot of money per hour for someone to use it. So what's interesting about the compute market is that it's very demand driven, which means that there's an on-demand price and there's a reserve price. So basically, for someone to go ahead and reserve the instance, meaning to reserve the GPU capacity, is a different price than using it without making the reservation. It's kind of like a restaurant reservation. So um it's kind of auction based internally, by data center. Um and I guess yeah, that's basically that's basically the long story short. It doesn't mine, but AI workloads and Bitcoin mining do share a lot of similarities in terms of the fact that they're both high performance computing processes that are power intensive, that require network connections and electrical connections, cooling, and maintenance. But aside from that, they don't share much.
Awesome, awesome. That clarifies a lot. So my last question, man, regarding more for how do you feel, man, like starting, from your room all the way to, sitting in an office in Paraguay, having your own place, building so much infrastructure. And I think you guys have an impressive track record. I mean, I'll be very honest, man. I'm actually shocked when I see it when I see where the price of XMW is right now. It actually shocks me that it's at these levels. Like if this was 2020, I'm sure that right now this would be sitting at $20, man. Of course, you can't give any price predictions, but as somebody who has seen that entire sort of DeFi and all these innovative projects coming out, yeah, I mean it's too undervalued at this point. So my question is, man, where do you see Morpher by the end of 2026 and beyond, of course? What can we expect? I know there's a lot of stuff that you can't say publicly, but if you can kind of give an idea, if you could summarize it into a few sentences, that'd be awesome, man. And we'll end it there after that.
Yeah, a couple like crypto founders have tweeted this before, but it's a clip I like too. That clip of Kobe where he says job's not done. For us, actually, we're all pretty how do I say this? We're not happy with the price. We think one, we've seen it much higher. Two, right? So there's that high watermark phenomenon. Two, um, we feel like the project has a lot of room to grow, not just from a valuation perspective, but from an execution perspective, right? So I'd say, Indiana just won against Miami in the college football championships, and I don't know. I don't know. Sports analogies are kind of cringe sometimes, but I'd say, we're coming for we basically we want to be like a how do I say this? We're working towards becoming a top 100 project. That's for sure. That's kind of like the goal in my mind, right? Um, every day, every hour, every day. Like, job's not done. So for us, it's really just a matter of working hard, continuing to deliver, working to do all the stuff as fast as possible. A lot of these data center projects take 3 to 5 years, and we're building much faster than that. So yeah, we're basically going ahead, working as fast as possible, and yeah, I think it's definitely not the time to rest on some concept or laurels or something like that. We got a lot of work to do.
Awesome, Kenzo. So, man, I think we're gonna wrap it up for now with this one, but I am gonna catch up with you soon. I believe some more things are under the pipeline. If I'm sure, I think at the right time, you're probably gonna talk about those things whenever those things take place. So I'm looking forward to all the growth for more for wishing you the very best, wishing the team the very best. And of course, I hope we can reconvene again and talk further about the developments because I really feel that honestly, you guys should be in the top 10, man. Like what you guys are building here in the Web3 space. Like I know you're aiming for top 100, but honestly, you guys should be like sitting way above that, in my opinion.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, that's definitely what we're aiming for. And
All
let's
right,
talk in a
Ken.
week.
Awesome, awesome. In a week, okay. So
Yeah, let's
I
let's
should.
do that.
So is there like some more surprises that you're going to be giving us? It seems like it.
I think so.
Okay, that's exciting. So guys, this is me, the DeFi enthusiast, and Kenza Trading from Morphware, and I am from Cryptoronins. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll be talking to you soon, Kenzo, and I'm looking forward to everything next week as well. Take care, guys. Bye.
Likewise, my friend. Talk soon.